and she was an inspiration to the name of our alliance. The second is the commemoration of the World Science Day for Peace and Development. And thirdly, the beginning of EELISA Days, as mentioned. This is a rich, intensive week of online, face-to-face events, hybrid activities all over our members in our 7 countries, hosted by our 9 institutions of higher education. The goal of this week is to give visibility to EELISA and as well to give new opportunities, tackle curiosities, bring new ideas, set important questions in our heads in order to open us to and discover new possibilities of growth within our universities. So this time, I have the mission to give you some welcome words on this event, because we also want to celebrate our first 2 years of existence. This is really important because, of course, we are doing baby steps, we are doing pioneering in a difficult context of higher education, to putting higher education at the center of world's transformations and challenges. So we are also celebrating joyfully our challenges. We have reached already important milestones in this alliance. One of the first that I would like to mention is, of course, the creation of more than 37 EELISA communities, which are new innovative platforms of collaboration, which are mission-driven. And this event is also developed in collaboration with one of these communities, Tech Diplomacy Community. And these communities are really a place into which together we'll tackle societal challenges, find new solutions in a more sustainable and systemic way. This is really important for EELISA. Of course, connected to EELISA communities is our innovative model of recognition, which is EELISA Credentials, that in a way puts in the field another level of recognition that just not acknowledge knowledge, but the capacity and the commitment to transform that knowledge into action. This is really important for EELISA. And of course, the third milestone reached is, of course, the definition and the work that we are doing around the profile of the European engineer. And I'm sure that discussions of today will be really rich and inspire us in that sense. So it's great pleasure that we cut this virtual ribbon together with Alberto, because now new formats of events put us together in a room, but also connected with many people online too. We'll have during this week a governing board, an important one in Paris, many different activities as exhibitions, hackathons, conference, student contests, and this all wanting to target thousands of students around Europe. And I would like, of course, to thank you, all the teams that have been working around our institutions in Europe to organize this week. You can find all the information in the website, access online or physical. And of course, the speakers for the willingness and generosity to be here today, and our dear moderator too that will be with us today. So now I would pass the baton to Professor Marcela González-Gross, professor in the area of physical education and sports at UPM and head of the I'm Fine research group. Professor González-Gross will be the moderator of this dialogue of Science for Peace, Past and Present, and she will also introduce our outstanding speakers too, and we'll be together during 1 hour and a half, exchanging knowledge and experience point of views. Thank you so much. A warm applause to our speakers and moderators. Please join us on stage.
Thank you very much, Sofia, Alberto, Vice Rector. So good morning to everyone here in the room, but also online. For me, it's a pleasure and the honor to moderate this session today, this kickoff of the EELISA week. And I would like to ask our invited speakers, Professor Maria Jesús Antesmases and Dr. Casimiro Vicini, to take the seats, and I will take also mine, and we start now our session. So please take your seat, and I would like first I would like to introduce our speakers, and then we will start with our dialogue, because We think that in this day, today we celebrate not only the birth date of ELISA, our women engineer who inspires us, but also today UNESCO celebrates the World Science Day for Peace and Development. So it's a coincidence. I think it's a great coincidence. So first of all, I would like to introduce our speakers. Professor María Jesús Santas Mases. She did her studies in chemistry and her PhD in organic chemistry. And after working for 5 years outside of academia in different positions, both in the newspapers, but also for companies, she came back to academia, and currently she's a research professor at the CSIC. This is the institute in Spain responsible for science, and currently she's working at the Institute of Philosophy of the Spanish National Research Council in Madrid. So she's combining history and the studies of biology, and she has published many books related to also of the history of Spanish biology and medicine, with books related to Severo Ochoa, to Ramón y Cajal, to our Nobel Prize awards in physiology and medicine. And currently she is the president of the commission. Sorry, I have to take off my glasses because I don't want to say it wrong. So she is the president of the Commission of Women and Gender Studies of the International Union of History and Philosophy of Science and Technology. Did I say right? Yes. So, we were just talking that they are doing an important work also currently in this commission, that they have a very updated web page that she invited us to visit. So, María Jesús, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for this invitation. I would like to thank the European Engineering Learning Innovation and Science Alliance. I would like to say completely, not only with this word, so as to make us fully aware of the meaning of the project, of the meaning of the network that is being created around it. So,
okay.
This year organization.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Before we go on with you, I would like also to introduce our other speaker. This is Dr. Casimiro Vizzini. He is a medical doctor by training. He studied in the University of Palermo, and after graduating in neurology, he is also studying different places. He went to Paris, and then he got acquainted with UNESCO. So he changed a bit his professional career from neurology to working with a master. First, he did a master's degree in international cooperation at the Institute of International and Strategic Relations, and then he's been working for many years, from 2007 until recently, for UNESCO in different positions. And he has been also for nearly 3 years the General Secretary of a sister alliance of universities for global health, with similar to our EELISA alliance. And currently he has gone back to clinics. He's working in a hospital in Paris some days a week in his training in neurology, but he's also a consultant to UNESCO and to other companies and institutions. So thank you very much, Dr. Vizzini, for being to us today.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias to invite me. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So you see, all of you can see that we have really very well-known and very remunerated speakers today. So for introducing, and now for introducing the first lecture from I would like to say something about our engineer who inspires our alliance, EELISA, because she was, as we already heard by Sophia, one of the first women engineers in history. I've been reading that it seems that the first one was one in Great Britain, but she's probably the second one. So she was born in Romania, the 10th of November, 1887. And she was born in a family. Her father was a military office. They were 10 brothers and sisters. Several of them studied engineering, and she also wanted to study engineering. And she was not accepted in Romania at the university, so she was accepted in Germany. This is a parallelism with our speaker, because she studied engineering with chemistry in the Technische University in Berlin. So, and then afterwards she went back to Romania, worked at the Institute for Geology. But during the First World War, she wanted to collaborate, and then she got a nurse in the Red Cross. So she worked in Romania to attend those who get injured in the war. After the First World War, she got back to work at the Institute of Geology, and she retired in 1963. But after retiring, she was still active, working for peace. She was in this time of the Cold War. So she is really not only an inspiring woman for being one of the first women studying engineering, but also for working on other values of humanity and working also for peace. So as I see, there is quite a coincidence with you, because Maria Jesus was telling me that she also did her postdoc in Berlin. So there is a parallelism with ELISA. I think this is a very nice coincidence. So then I wanted to introduce you, because you have also been studied, and you are now focused a lot on gender studies related to different topics. So I think there is really, we can have a cross-link also with the inspiration of ELISA. So I would like now the floor is yours now, and we are very kind to hear your presentation. Thank you very much.
Should I? You should start then. Thank you very much again to the Alliance and to the officers, Sofia, the Vice Rector of the University, Polytechnic University of Madrid, Alberto Garrido, thank you very much. So I would take the opportunity to reflect a bit on women and technologies, on women in technological studies from a historical point of view. And when talking about peace and women, particularly in this moment of our history, contemporary history, the frame is in a good part is war and the knowledge society on one hand, and an inclusive society of wisdom on the other. So when talking about peace and women, it is from these studies on women at war that we are able to reflect on the extent to which women faced differently peace and war, difficulties and its tragedies, by fully participating in public, professional life during the war, and being brought back home in the post-war, when the war was over, being promoted as the core of the family, of love and care, when the men came back from the war front. So this is how the post-war social order, the peaceful moment, was constructed, by situating women as mothers and carers instead of professional or in addition to workers of any kind. So you see that even if women have been fully participating in the war efforts, let me show you. No, this is not yet. Okay, sorry. So they participated in the war effort both at home and in the factories. At the end of the wars, and it's not happened once, it happens every time in every war. When men came back from the war front, they are brought back home as mothers and carers, as in this social order hierarchized by gender.
So peace became a new epoch after the war, after the urgencies of recovery. So this is how we can define peace today: the absence of war and the absence of the urgencies of recovery. And this is what I could reflect upon today when launching this EELISA Days opening conference: the absence of war, peaceful technologies, and women participating in them all. So this is not about the peaceful, the so-called peaceful atoms, those that belong to the Atoms for Peace campaign that US President Eisenhower launched in 1955 in an international conference in Geneva that put the basis of the distribution of nuclear power plants, technologies, a recycling of atomic energy, the uses of radioactivity in research in many fields, scientifically exciting as it may be, has been the basis upon which much knowledge about nature and risks was produced during the second half of the 20th century, about biology, biomedicine, and ironically, about environment as well. As Princeton Professor Angela Krieger has very insightfully put it, radioactive isotopes were the tools that, while contaminating rivers and lakes, allowed to know about how toxicity was distributed in the environment. So the politics for peace against the atom created one of the most long-lasting contemporary social movement, the anti-nuclear and environmental movement, a social movement and an academic space for learning and practices, the environmental sciences and ecology as well. So this goes beyond biology, biomedicine, health and justice, so as to concern the social sciences and the humanities, sociology and philosophy, as has the history of science and technology, have created encounters, mediations and dialogues about what technology and its learning counterpart, engineering, meant and means today for women as for men. And very fast, I would like to show again, for you that are fully aware of this very nice photographic album of EELISA Leonidas Zamfirescu, who worked for peace during the Great War, and later, it has been mentioned already today, by protesting against nuclear weapons. So this is the album, the set of photographs offered by her biographer, the Romanian Molteanu, that is also mentioned in these images. So regarding the history of science and technology, I would like to mention 2 points. That is the participation of women and also the genderization of technology. There are 2 aspects of the same problem. I mean, the participation of women in the production of technological knowledge and technologies as such, but also how the practices of engineering has been fully genderized until today. So I will be reflecting on these in these few minutes. Regarding the history of science and technology, historians and feminist studies have indeed shown the many women who occupied workplaces at universities, research centers, and factories, both in manufacturing and managing tasks, in times of war and in times of peace. Those studies on women scientists and technologists have also shown that post-war years sent women back home, as I said, so to leave the professional spaces to those men that came back and of such war. And for many women, however, their workplaces outside the household was something they did not want to leave. And thus, even if defying public policies of the time, and especially the public policy of recovering fertility rates after the war, they remained professionally active until today. So this is how women became involved in engineering and technological tasks from the post-war years until today. Many work and research were done by women during war and during peace, at the laboratory benches, pilot plants that led to important set of achievements, such as efficient manufacturing of penicillin, for example. So let's just show you the many places in which women have been working in war as in peace, at Lister Institute, in very long and very important factory lines, in factories producing weapons, both in the Great War and in the Second World War. It's an amazing set of images in many archives around the world, in private and public companies, and you can find some of them in the internet. Pay attention to them, because this is the testimony of how long-lasting the presence of women in technical and engineering tasks have been. And now we have this in which you can see the women, 3 of them involved in the early days of penicillin, as well as experts, as pathologists, as graduated students of the University of Oxford, who participated in the very early works on penicillin. So this is a good example, the lot of work being done in war times and as in peace, in bacteriology and in microbiology, for example, in apparently modest projects, such as those in search of identifying and characterizing microbes so as to produce vaccines and sera, and to participate in the studies of infectious diseases, projects in which bacteria and viruses were fully on focus, either in war or in peace times. So these biotechnologies were developed in many schools of engineering. In Spain, there has been very much the case at the School of Agronomy, and we have this scientific couple, biotechnologists Pilar Carbonero and Francisco García Olmedo. They together and also separately did very important research on crop improvement and on biotechnology, and have been very active and highly productive and very well recognized in these fields from the School of Agronomy as engineers. So engineering is not only about machines, sophisticated techno apparatuses, but as well about research at the bench with plants, including cereals, microorganisms, animal breeding, seed selection, this kind of activities in which many women have participated, as you can see here again. So women architects, women civil engineers, and many others belong to a genealogy of women who worked in factories and civil work even before they were allowed to receive university degrees, university education, technical training, to enter technical schools. If we take seriously photographs as testimonies, as sources, we found women all around. So being hired at workplaces in which it was argued no previous training was required, and for these they were paid less, low salaries, lower than those of men for the same task, and they lacked any training. They had low pays because of that, and they had these low salaries because management responsibilities and university education was not considered appropriate for young girls. So women had interests, received education, and aspired to professional life all along the 20th century, probably more so after the suffrage campaigns and their alignment with the progress attributed to science and technology, as Patricia Farah has shown in her very nice book of 2018. So my reflection here is aims at sharing with EELISA Alliance my sincere worry about how to make technical education, engineering, an attractive, more friendly space for women. This issue would be probably more related to this than to the fact that women need to be encouraged to study technology, maths, and physics. Role models are sometimes useful, as women's names may create a promise for this woman who aspire to acquire knowledge and training in a diversity of technologies and technology management. As US historian of women scientist Margaret Rossiter noted some decades ago, a big name, such as Marie Curie's, may be more dissuasive than an inspiration, as this famous, very well-known and admired scientist was very technological one, so this could well contribute to this, to think about technologies as well as about engineering, has become such a special, unique, extremely successful example that few women would be inspired by this unusual case of huge achievement and recognition. However, as historians of science, technology, and gender, Maria Rentezzi has shown, many women worked in radioactivity in the interwar period in Vienna. Rentezzi does a beautiful job constructing the history of radioactivity through an analysis of the architecture of research buildings and the distribution of working spaces therein, from the Medizinviertel to the coffee houses. Radioactivity as a new discipline also allowed women scientists to play an active role in early 20th century Vienna in the research on radioactivity. So the tools for detecting and measuring radioactivity, the scintillation counter, this apparatus that allows us since then to detect radiation. The scintillation counter was transformed in female hands, according to Rentezzi, clothed, as she says, to remark the power of the place and the fact that things are dressed with meaning by Vienna's culture of radioactivity. But as the story progressed, particularly as the Nazi progressed in Austria by 1936, experienced women experimenters lost control over these instruments. So the history of women in the sciences is not a long, very nice line of progressing, but it's about coming higher and low and again high and back low. So yet here, just as in Cambridge at that time, there were more women active in research in science and technology than stereotypes have led us to expect, and more male scientists supporting women than is generally thought. So all these cases I've mentioned show, at least since the scientific revolution, as men with lower salaries, lower recognition, and not being remembered as contributors to technologies and invention, women have been around in sciences and technologies for decades already, and that most of them has been at the places where they were welcome, avoiding those that they were not. Academic spaces, buildings, styles of training, distribution of rooms, and the social attention paid to women are part of a history of science and technology as we know them today, as peaceful space for knowledge, transmission, and production in which fair relationships create an environment for learning, invention, creation, and innovation for an inclusive history of the past and hopefully of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria Jesus. This was really an inspiring speech with so many data also. So now we go on for Dr. Vizzini. We already said that he's a medical doctor and he has been working at UNESCO at the Division of Science Policy and Capacity Building. And we were also talking that he has been involved in several European projects funded by Horizon 2020 and working also with the importance of education. Maybe we come later to this again. And also how to handle data, also mainly genetic data. So we introduced this word of scientific diplomacy. I think this is a very interesting word. So we would like to hear about your experience related to the topic. So thank you very much again for accepting our invitation.
As I said, I'm glad to be here, and again, muchas gracias. I will talk about my professional experience, about my life, because I'm a medical doctor by training, as was said by Marcela, but I decided at some point of my career that there was something else I wanted to improve, that something that was pushing me to go in, not only in the scientific field, but also how to use scientific knowledge for society. And that was at the end of my residency. You can imagine that after 11 years of studies, when you say that you are going to drop your career to start from scratch, it's a shock societal for your family, for your friends. Nobody can understand why. It's the society, especially in Latin societies, it's very hard to think that someone who has a scientific background is using his scientific background for something else. But I was convinced that that was my path. And so I decided to, I was in Paris by chance because I was finishing my residency there. And UNESCO headquarters is in Paris, so I decided to try to be an intern there. So I was an old intern compared to the average, but had the opportunity to enter in the division of science policy and capacity building. The names inside the UN system changes a lot. But the idea was working to use science for education, science for peace, and then a recent concept that I would say more later is science diplomacy. Why it's extremely pertinent. You know, the motto of UNESCO says that the war starts in the mind of men and women, and it's in the mind of men and women that we have to create the barriers to war. So for me was the idea of using scientific knowledge to create a better society, not just to have more researchers, more doctors, that is of course needed and more than ever nowadays, but also to create a better citizen. And at the beginning, I started working with genetic data, and this was then related to scientific diplomacy. Because scientific diplomacy, science diplomacy, sorry, not scientific diplomacy, science diplomacy is a recent concept for a very old practice, because science has always been used in diplomatic strategies and actions, but was never really codified. I mean, and UNESCO was involved since the beginning, after the Second World War, for example, the creation of CERN, that was created to put together countries that until the year before were killing each other and to collaborate in a scientific endeavor as CERN is. And then step by step, the international community has created different institutions and initiatives on science diplomacy, and I was there when the Sesame, that is a synchrotron light in Jordan, was implemented by UNESCO, and where you can find scientists working from different countries that don't recognize themselves, like the Palestinian authorities, Iran, Israel, Jordan, in an area that we know is extremely sensitive to conflicts. But the codification of science diplomacy is extremely recent. It was in 2010 the first time that the AAAS, the American Association for Advancement in Science, gave with the Royal Society a definition, and we can decline in 3 different actions, but it's not exhaustive nowadays. It's the first is science for diplomacy, diplomacy for science, and science in diplomacy. The science in diplomacy is the science advice. So it's how science can advise diplomatic actions, technical issues, and give advice to the foreign affairs. The science for diplomacy is in the moment in which science is used as a neutral space in which diplomatic issues can be solved differently. I mean, going in a neutral space when it's not possible elsewhere. And diplomacy for science is scientific cooperation. It's how diplomacy can improve the cooperation between countries through promoting the ties between countries. So this is not exhaustive because it's very hard to codify, and there are recent definition has the use a more practical definition, like science diplomacy can be declined in another 3 ways. For example, this science for national issues, science for international issues or global issues like climate change, or science for transboundary issues, for example, water related. So I don't like to to close a definition and but to open the science diplomacy to all these different kind of actions. The idea was in UNESCO when I started working was to create a field of science diplomacy, not create, but implement a field of science diplomacy on data sharing, as you mentioned, and genetic data sharing. So I was responsible for a project that was called the Human Variant Project, created in Melbourne, in the University of Melbourne. The idea was to create a network of databases on genetic mutation related to disease. That is extremely important because until then, and I mean even today, it was not so clear how to share information on genetic data. And we needed to set standards and to set the network. And this is extremely important because nowadays it's very easy to have your DNA, the mapping of your DNA. It's quite cheap actually, it's around 50 euros. But who is able to understand what is written in this mapping? It's very hard because the mutations are thousands, if you create a network in which you can share data, a patient who is going to visit his doctor with his DNA mapping and the doctor has access to this network, is able to see that the mutation, the specific mutation was described in the other side of the world and can give answers. So this needs cooperation between countries, between cultures. And especially my role in UNESCO was to involve developing countries for many reasons. Because genetics is often still confined in the Western world, genetic research, unfortunately, and this is not fair. But also is not useful because, for example, excluding a continent as Africa has puts a lot of limits for reason. We all come from there, and also migration has created a different kind of population in the world, in the Western world. So the involvement of countries in Africa and the use of the sharing of data was extremely important to create capacities there, but also to create links in the countries in different regions. For example, we traveled to Nigeria to set a hub there in Abuja that was meant to develop a network in Western Africa. And this is what I call the low-cost science diplomacy. Low-cost science diplomacy because, as I mentioned before, the science diplomacy was done by investing a lot of money, creating big infrastructures, extremely expensive. And sometimes, I mean, we know that funding is an issue. Sharing data is much more feasible and cheaper than constructing big infrastructure. So it's a way to collaborate on sharing data that can be implemented much more easily. And for me was one of the main goals. And I associated this genetics, but it's not just about genetics. Genetics was the field in which I was operating, but it can be applied. The concept of sharing data for diplomacy it can be applied for ecological sciences, for gender sciences, and a lot of other fields. Beside that, something else that is extremely important and that was also financed by the European Commission. I need to say that the European Commission has been extremely important to finance this project also because there was a strong will of the Commissioner Moedas to implement science diplomacy in the European Union because, as I said before, it was, let's say, a privilege of the United States and the American Association of Advanced Scientific Science to have a science diplomacy theory and publication. But the European Union financed this project to create policy brief. I was responsible for the creation of this policy brief on science diplomacy. And I think that we did a lot, but still we need to do a lot more in Europe. And then another project that was financed by the European Commission, but that also a very important impact in societies, was the project called Perform. And it was about the use of non-conventional means to teach science. So science is extremely important, not only, as I said at the beginning, to create scientists, but also to create better citizens. So we were using a different way to use science to implement the interest in science in high school students. We work with the University of Barcelona, and especially we work with schools in lower social environments, socioeconomical environments. And in Paris, in Bristol, and in Barcelona, it was a pilot project. It was a big success. I have to say that was extremely emotional to see how young students were engaged in science through the use of performing arts, for example. In the group in Barcelona was using the stand-up comedies. And we had really results of people that would have never thought to be a scientist in the future. But we will also not only just creating motivational actions, motivational education in the students, but also to spread this concept that science can be used to create a knowledgeable society, so that you can be, as I did myself, changing from a very technical background to something that is more related to society and international relations. Science can be used to create better citizens. A citizen is someone who has the right to vote. And I think that the knowledge is not, the knowledge is good for itself. And not, we don't have to think always to an utilitarian way of considering science. So why you're studying that? This is a question that shouldn't be asked, I think, because you study to be a better person at the end of the day, and your knowledge is extremely important to have a better society. So these are the two main projects, but I mean we can develop other aspects. I think I didn't went out of time.
Thank you very much. So thank you both to the speakers. I think they have been both very inspiring. Many topics came around: gender issues, the society of knowledge, the importance of knowledge, of educating the younger people to be better citizens. So I think there are many topics in the room. Now we are going to start a dialogue between the speakers, and then we will also have questions here in the room and online. So to start somewhere, no? Because we were saying that, as you are an Italian, and we were talking about that Massimo D'Anzerio said, no, because Italy was not Italy, but they say now we have Italy, but we have to create Italian citizens. No? And I would like to ask both of you also of the role of these European universities, about the role, probably also for gender issues, but also this general knowledge to be better citizens, to create really an European citizenship, and also the role of these European universities like EELISA in all these issues, not gender, science, diplomacy, science for peace, how can we have a better future. So I would also like to know your opinion about these European universities, if they are really, what should be the role, the leading role now in this context?
Maria.
Well, thank you for the question. I think, politically speaking, the fact that we have these European universities is extremely encouraging, I think, for young people. International networks have been extremely important in the history of science and technology. You know, I remember the case when it was after the Great War, there was a huge congress International Congress of Physiology. And it was the first time that physiologists all over Europe were going to be together in the same ship, the same big ship, you know, transatlantic, to travel from Europe to Boston, where the Congress was to be held. And two very well-known physiologists of the time, one was British, it was Archibald Vivian Hill, and the other was the big biochemist Otto Meyerhoff. They organized together the trip in a boat in which there were no differences between classes. They were allowed to meet anyone. No, there were not barriers between classes, so they were together. And it was an extremely good experience, and all of them remember that, as well as the Congress itself, because they arrived in Boston, you know, it was 1929. And it was the first time after the Peace of Versailles that the scientists of so many countries were together, trying to broken the huge differences and problematic relationships that the Great War had created. So these international organizations, and of course the leading role of some people that are really committed to these international connections, is one of the main thing we're in debt to. In fact, there are also many women who participated in this Congress, and there were huge debates that belong now to the history of biochemistry. You know, they discussed about many reactions that are already in handbooks of biochemistry. You cannot know about it if you read only the manual to study to pass your exam. But if you read a bit more, it's very nice to know how useful it was to have so many scientists together from so many countries at this very difficult moment. So I think we have plenty of cases that show that the international connections are extremely, extremely influential and inspiring for everyone.
This is a really interesting story. I didn't know about the story of the boat, so I just, because I'm a fan also, you know, they are both great scientists, Till and Otto Meyerhoff, so this was really a nice story. What I would like also Professor Vizzini to tell us a bit about, or Dr. Vizzini about...
Yes, thank you for mentioning Massimo D'Azeglio. It's a sentence that is I think, very important also for Europe. As Marcella said, he said, we did Italy, but now we need to do the Italians in 1861 to the unification of Italy. And I think that today we can say that after the 50s, we did Europe, but we need to do the Europeans. And how to do Europeans, in my opinion, through knowledge. And where is knowledge? In the universities. So the idea of university, not only, but I mean, universities are the center of production of knowledge. And I think that the idea of the European University that actually stemmed out from the speech of President Macron in Sorbonne, it's a great idea because it's confederating university, trying to share capacity, to share values, to transfer values. It's not only, as I said before, and I will stress this concept, we need more scientists, yes, of course, but we need also better citizens. So it's through science that we can convey values. And the European universities, they have the goal to convey the European values, so to create the European citizen, to open much more these opportunities that in 1929 was for very high-level scientists. But nowadays we have to do that for much more people. We have to spend money, because if we don't give funds to that, we will always keep it into an elite. And we don't want that to be just an elite. If Europe wants to be Europe, we need feelings. And feelings cannot be just the cultivated elites, the cultural elites that stays in their labs. We need to train students and young people into the European values, because without feelings, we will never feel the belonging to the European Union.
If I can say something,
yeah, please.
Because this is very problematic. I think it's not exactly fair that you call the people working in the lab as an elite, because as you may know, I mean, labs all around the world are full of hard workers who work from 9 to 9, earning most of them
From Monday to
not
Sunday.
much money, being trained with these studentships that are very, very soft money. So they are not an elite. What is an elite, of course, is the Nobel Prize awardees and all these people. But most of the scientific community, that is a great, huge number of people working to produce knowledge, is not part of any elite, unfortunately.
Absolutely right.
So
I totally
I just
agree.
wanted to, because
I
I'm
was
so worried, you know.
No, I wasn't clear.
I'm worried about my
in
students.
terms of economical aspects. Elite in terms of the access to knowledge. That is different. I mean, I didn't want to mention an elite in terms of privilege in life. I mean, it's a privilege, but it's an elite in terms of cultural access, a possibility, opportunity to have access to knowledge, and not elite in the sense of economical. I know very well as a medical doctor nowadays how we are not an elite. Believe me, in terms of economic means. No, it was the elite in sense of the opportunity to have knowledge, to access to knowledge. That's different.
Yeah, still, I think it's...
Yeah, so I would, before going to the next question, I would like to introduce a very short one. I would like to hear your opinion, because we are talking about knowledge, about science, about engineering. And normally, for example, the history of the engineering or the history of science, or what we are saying now, the importance of other knowledges, soft skills, probably they are not so much in our curricula. So if you read listening to you, if we really want also through science and through knowledge have better citizens and working for peace or for ethical values, how should we also rethink something of our curricula, not only go on the specific topics to learn chemistry, mathematics, blah, 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 but also these other more from the sociological field and humanistic field. Do you think this would also be necessary to rethink this, to have more all over students, not only so technological focus? What do you think? This is a question for both of you.
Yeah, well, there is a very, very interesting case being launched in Barcelona. That is a graduate program in which humanities and the sciences are sort of mixed, and it's called. The title is, I think, Science and Humanities. It has been designed by a group of scientists, I mean experimental scientists and historians of science from the Autonomous University and also from the University of Barcelona and the University Carlos III. And they are in Madrid. They are already in the second year. So let's follow the case, because it seems it's being a very exciting way of obtaining scientific knowledge, including humanities in the curricula. So this is possible not only in these universities in which sometimes in the United States or sometimes also in the UK, that you can study very much scientific issue, and then you can have some during some terms history or philosophy or sociology or something. It's about really mixing it, and I think we really need it. I mean, to be able to talk between us. I mean, historians and experimental scientists and sociologists, anthropologists that are extremely critical with the practices of science and technology. I do think so, yes. So thank you for the question, because I think it's instrumental.
The question is very interesting. I actually mentioned before the project Perform, and we also, as I said, we work with the Universidad Oberta de Catalunya on Perform was not only about teaching science with the non-conventional means, but was also involving scientific early career researchers in the training, so through communication. And this is, my role in UNESCO at that time was to create policy brief to integrate in the curricula, because sometimes, and we have seen that during the pandemic, how bad was the communication about science, and how the the credibility of science fall down, because there's no training nowadays in the curricula on communication, for example. And if a scientist has qualities in communication, he has to improve that as a hobby. And that's not the way to do. And that's where politics has to intervene. Because a scientist that wants to be trained in sociology, in humanities, in communication, has to have a reward from his career officially. It has to. You cannot ask someone who is working, as you said, from the morning to the night in a lab, then the weekend you go and you do a training course on communication. No. It has to be recognized in your curricula. Your boss has to give you the permission because it's part of your training. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, and this is only politics can do that, because we need to have policies that drives in this direction. And that was part of our job with Perform. Early career researchers were involved in the training of high school students.
Yes, probably now that we are building European universities, no, and we have here our vice rector who is responsible for EELISA, maybe it's also an opportunity to rethink, no?
Absolutely.
That these European universities should not copy paste at European level, but maybe take the good things that we are doing already, but also to rethink and build a new. It's a new construction, not to copy what is also existing at national level and at European level. What do you think? No, maybe this is a great opportunity to do things. What is working well, don't change it, but maybe to improve some other aspects that we think can be improved. And this is an opportunity. These European universities, no?
Sharing is the starting point of development. I mean, the capacity of sharing, the exchanges between different cultures, different practices is the base for development. And if we want, that's in history has been like this. So I think that is the example to give through European University. The change can come from the collaboration.
Yeah, and in fact, this is very much a challenge of the Commission of Women and Gender Studies. I don't know if we can just open the web page just for you to have a look.
We have the web page.
I don't know if it is possible, just for because there is a very nice photograph.
It should be possible.
That has been brought by the Vice President, Don Opitz from Chicago, and just to show that our efforts there are not only to promote historical studies on women and gender, but also to promote the connection between scientists, experimental scientists, and researchers and academicians from the social sciences and the humanities. It's just acknowledged there. Hope you can, yeah? So there is, this very nice photograph I wanted to show you. That is the women from NASA in the 60s, working together, mathematicians of all kind. And we are reworking the web page so as to have women from other countries, not always from the US, because there were many women all around the world working at that time in many aspects of this. So you see these women of the 60s, they are, this is a very nice expression of what we are trying to do from the Commission. So yes, this is very much a challenge, and we have the necessity. I mean, there is a need for this, definitely. Thank you.
No, it's a great picture.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I like it very much. It's great.
It's wonderful, really.
Yes, because sometimes to change things what are already moving, but this is really a new opportunity, because it's a new thing, European university, so it's enough. So probably it's easier to do the things in a different way than what is already going on, and it's more difficult to change things sometimes. No? So coming back a bit to, do you want to add something to what was just said until now?
I have a personal history about gender, but I mean, it's not absolutely. I have my grandmother in the 30s was a student of architecture in Italy, and it was actually in Sicily. That's even harder. And I sent a picture to the chat. I don't know if you can share this picture. I sent it in the chat that we have via ELISA, and I don't know if it can be done. The interesting thing that she was, I think, there were two students, the female students in architecture, and the card, her card was all written in Italian, like in Spanish we have O and A for masculine and feminine, and it was written in O. There was not even the option to have students of graduated. It was all in masculine. I don't know if we can share it just because you shared this very extremely interesting picture. I always show this picture as how hard it was for her and how hard for her was then to work as an architect in the 50s and 60s in Italy. In Sicily, and actually she married, my grandfather was an architect too, and she had the opportunity, but the only way she could practice was teaching, because teaching was the corner in which women could have a space for their career, no, it was just to add something to it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how things evolve, no? So we are here now because all these people, not only women, but also the fathers who permitted their daughters to study, no? So it's an evolution, and we are here thanks to all these people who pushed things, no? Mm-hmm. And in Europe, I think we can be proud of what we have reached already in Europe. I think we can be proud of that, even if we have a lot to do. No?
A lot.
But it's so I would. While we have tried to see the picture, I would like to pass over a bit to the other question, because talking about war and peace or even terrorism, many of the technological things that have been developed, like the microwave or some other issues, even in sports sciences, for example, some things have been studied for military or for the NASA, and then we use it for sports. Or the microwave, it was developed first for military, but then everyone used it. So I would like to go past a bit to rethink this. No, it's research and technological aspects related also to military things that have been useful for the community. Is this going on in your opinion? Are things changing? The society or the world it was a global world until now. It's getting a bit more polarized. How do you think is this evolving, and how scientists can treat with this? Because scientists working also for military development, they are scientists doing their job. So how do you think about all these issues?
Well, I think there are many cases in which experiments at the bench became knowledge that was used in war times, and much more than the other way around, I think. Remember radioactivity, for example, and its relation with the atomic bomb. So, but there are some others. The case of chemistry, I mean, toxic gases and mustard gas, very much used in the Great War, the First World War, were extremely useful because of its. They were poison gases. So it was not that the research was done to produce poison gases. It was that the gases being researched at many labs that were suddenly used in war times. So we have this very complex society in which war has become not only a problem, but also a sort of an encouragement for further developments. And this is very, very problematic. And there is a lot scientists can do. And scientists have already done this in international organizations against weapons, against wars, promoting connections, promoting congresses, organizing international projects, creating the international organizations, the S from UNESCO. The science in UNESCO world was promoted by one of the very well-known biologists from Britain, that was Huxley at that time. So Huxley, as a scientist, was seated in the middle of the table in which UNESCO was being presented as a new creation from the United Nations. So there is a lot that science and technology and the people working on it can do and have already done.
I believe that the problem is always related to funds. Why war is creating advances in science? Because for war, countries provides a lot of funds. And this is the point. I mean, we need to provide funds for peace, not funds for war. If with funds, without funds, science cannot be implemented, and we cannot have advances. And unfortunately, wars is the moment in which countries are spending a lot of money to have new weapons and new technologies, and that's often the case. And then we discover something is discovered for bad reasons, like for the dark side of every. Science is neutral. Science is not bad or good. Science can be used badly or in a good manner, in a responsible manner. But to have science, you need funds, and without funding, there is no implementation and advances. Unfortunately, for war, we spend a lot of money. So that's for me the link between the negative side and if we don't realize, and that was as Maria Jesus says, UNESCO and other international organizations are always promoting and pushing for providing funds, providing infrastructure for science, not for peace and in peaceful moment, not just during conflicts.
Okay, maybe I come later again because I wanted to know your opinion in a related topic, but first I would like to open now the panel for questions from the public. Here is in the room some question. Yes, Professor Garrido. It's okay, there's another microphone, or yeah?
Thank you. You've mentioned European values as something that we have to promote. Certainly the European Commission has put a lot of emphasis for the European education area, and in particular for the European alliances. We had a discussion amongst ourselves in ELISA, and a member of our board said, maybe if we put so much effort in European values, somebody could interpret that as a excessive Eurocentric view. So I'd like you to elaborate on this risk so that we understand, in your views, why European values are so important now, what is meant to be solved, why is it important for the European education area to talk about European values, and try to connect that with science for peace, which is the topic of the table. Thank you very much.
Who wants to say something?
For once, you can start.
If
you don't mind.
I mean, the point is that what's Europe? We want to define Europe geographically. It's very hard. Where it finishes, where it starts. Politically, it's an invention. As a national state, Spain, Italy, France exist because we invented. It's not by nature that we have states. So what's Europe? For me, Europe is a common package of values that are the result of a century of wars. Europe was the center of the biggest disaster ever in the history of human being, not only in its territory, but also in the rest of the planet. And after that, in the 50s, we decided, after the disaster of the Second World War, to share values based on peace and collaboration. So for me, Europe is that. It's not, and of course, to share values, you need institutions, because we live, this is the reality. Without institutions, we need the institutions, and the institutions are made to promote, to share these values. But for me, Europe is the belonging to us, to this complex of values. So the Eurocentrism, it's a risk, of course, because, but I think that the exercise that was done from the 50s was exactly this: try to understand that European values are values of respect, of mutual understanding. So if we can understand each other after centuries of killing each other, I think we can understand the others around the world. So the Eurocentrism was probably much more, and was probably the end of the peaceful Europe before the First World War. So it was much before. So we thought that Europe was the best place in the world, and when we had to conquer the rest of the world to put there our ideas. I mean, it's not completely changed nowadays, but at least we tried after the Second World War to go into this direction, understanding each other, to understand the others.
Okay. We will mix the questions from the online and yes. So I will give now an online question, then we come back here to the room. So here is a question for Maria Jesus. At UPM, we are struggling to be attractive enough for female students, especially ICT degrees like computer engineering, software, or telecommunications. We have developed research programs, built shared actions with school addressed to 14-year-old girls, besides the traditional actions to 17, 18-year-old students. We have showed inspiring tech women as role models to girls, etc. And it's not enough. We need more. What would you suggest to do? Because I feel we need a deeper revolution in society to change how 3-year-old girls receive information from their environments. So
Very
this is
long
the
question.
this is a very long.
Be concentrated.
So now
A long question and a short answer.
no, it's not a short answer, of course. Yeah, because I agree, I fully agree that the actions have been focused very much on young women, but the actions should be focused as well on the organization and hierarchies of the schools, of the polytechnic schools as well. You know, that are organized around the authority of men systematically, because this is how it has been working until now and still today. So this is there is a lot of gender culture around this, and we need to think together about how is making these polytechnic schools so much gendered, so much male space, and how to make it more friendly for women. And I don't have the answer. I think we need to sit together. I mean, you need to sit together to discuss, probably with women professors of other universities, how chemistry, for example, became so friendly for women at some point, or how pharmacy, or how, in fact, as I think I know, it's that, for example, informatics and all these studies became at some point very attractive for young women, and then things changed, and they had less women among students than before. So it means that something is happening. So it's not to convince young women to study more and to do more effort, because we are doing a lot, you know, at home and in safari, as they say. So we need help. We need to feel welcome, and this is difficult. I mean, this is difficult. I mean, it's easy to say, but you need to sit down and sort of create groups of working groups to talk about these with expert and lay people. I mean, both. I mean, students, professors. I don't know how it will work, but it's quite an experience. That it would be nice that from this alliance you would be able to implement something. I know it's difficult, but it's something that should be done. It's easier to go to schools and say, hey, come on, girls, let's do more maths. But this is not the way
No.
it works. I mean, this is not working this way.
Yeah, it probably takes also a bit of more time.
Yes,
no?
of course.
Yeah,
Of course.
because as we were saying, no, things need time also to change. No?
Yeah, but it's not only about
if
time.
I can have
Yeah, for
a
sure.
little note, because it's extremely interesting what Maria has just said, and it's related to the role of women in society. Why some subjects became feminized? Because they were not earning money. As I said, for my grandmother, teaching was, in a way, the space in the society where men were living because it was not enough to be powerful and rich. And informatics was the same pattern. At the beginning was not such an important economically aspect of the society, so it was feminized. And then when it became a place where you can make a lot of money and having power, it became a male domain. So it's always the case. It's the role that the society gives to women that is a secondary role where they find space. It's the same in medicine. At the beginning, doctors were rich and respected and powerful in the past, so it was very male-dominated area. When it started to be less respected, less economically interesting, it became more and more feminized. So unfortunately, it's always the case that we tend to put women in the space where you can have less power and less money.
No, this is an interesting reflection. So I would like to give now the room for a question here. Yes, please, Manuel.
Okay, thank you very much. So first, thank you for this very interesting dialogue or opening session. And I have one question or comment to Dr. Vicini. When you mention the transfer of knowledge to African universities and scientific system, I fully agree with you that this is necessary, but I have two concerns. One is that we still need to invest on infrastructure, even if it's no low cost at all. But what is happening in the last years is that China is investing in Africa, also in Latin America, but in Africa it's much more important because they are transferring or they are occupying the space that Europe is not occupying now, and they are transferring the Chinese values to Africa, much higher than European values. And this is important for us. And the second concern is that the African university system is not for sure equal to the European one, but even to the Latin American one. In Africa, still the university system is very dedicated to the high economical level class. So if we only invest in transfer of knowledge, we have the risk of only acting over the high level class. And I think we should do transfer of knowledge, of course, but also other kind of activities. So this is my concern. I wanted your opinion or your, yeah.
Extremely interesting. The point is that if the brain drain, I mean, this is the point. If you just create capacities, but you don't intervene in a systemic way in which the economical system is changing, no scientist will like from Africa will love to stay there because you don't have opportunities. Why I have to stay in Abuja if I can go to London and have a wonderful career and a wonderful house? I can keep my family there. My kids will have a wonderful school. Why I have to stay there? Why I have to stay in Africa? So this is the point. If it's a systemic approach, you have to invest to develop the country and the realities, the society in all the aspects. So then you will have scientists that want to stay there. Because if we just train scientists in Africa and then they leave, because of course it's much better to stay in Europe. We are just creating more scientists for Europe. We are stealing minds, we're stealing brains from from this reality. So I think the point is that science has to be integrated in a systemic approach in development, and Europe has to wake up and think as a global actor, because of course if we still don't think, but this is very hard. We have national interests still being extremely heavy, but I hope that new generation are going over this national interest, because we have to act as a global actor, because otherwise, as you say, in the multipolar world, we will never be able. Not even the biggest country and the richest country of Europe, like Germany, can be a counterpart to China or the US, I mean, or India in the future. So it's the systemic approach and acting as a global actor.
For sure.
May I say something on this? I think we should think very carefully about not creating new colonialism, and remembering that every scientist would like to go back home, all around the world. Don't forget that. I mean, it is true that many would like to stay in the US, many at least from Spain. Some of them stay in the US, but most of them came back. So as far as we know, people come back. Scientists come back, professionals come back. So this means that we are not exactly promoting that they would stay in Europe, but it's difficult to create a space of attraction as Europe has become, without being able to accept the people being attracted by this place. And this is the huge contradiction of the continent, not only of the continent, but of the European Union as a political organization. So I think it's much more complex that only telling people in Africa what to do. It's much more sophisticated, and we need a very deep, profound analysis of this.
Yeah, and this is also a challenge for science, in general, that we were talking about, and maybe not. There is, as we were saying, there is an opportunity in Africa or in other countries where they are more behind, that to do it in a different way, not to copy the good things and maybe to change some others. So here's a question from the online audience for Casimiro. She says, hello, thank you for the inspiring presentations. I'm an engineering student from Spain, and I'm very concerned about the current international situation, my future as a working professional. It's much in line with what we are saying. I have a question for Casimiro. From your point of view as students, how can we navigate between the competitiveness pushed by labor markets and the solidarity we need to activate? So I think this is much in line what we are saying here.
So the question is how to navigate between the competitiveness
pushed by the labor market and to be more solidarity or working for peace, or
It's not working.
It's not working.
So it's a very hard to answer, because the point is, again, the competitiveness is done by the labor market, because it's if it's only a private sector aspect. But once again, what we do in the international organization is to push the public institution to spend money and to finance and to fund science, engineering. So I believe that how to navigate, it's a very complex way of, I think it depends also, it depends from what you want to do. I mean, if your only goal is to make a lot of money, or if you want to contribute to the society, I mean, and you can do both in any case, but you have to be clear that if you agree with some values, you will have to give up to something for obtaining something else. So it's very hard to answer,
now the companies have la responsabilidad social corporativa, the responsibility. Probably also private companies are trying to create this space where they are most socially engaged, within the people in their company, but also doing social projects. I don't know if you have some experience with this part of the private companies. I think it could be a link to what we are talking about, to work more for ethical aspects. Do you have an experience about that, Maria Jesus?
Well, not really, but I have my main worry now is that these kind of challenges that have been sort of circulating around to create better labor spaces, more fair situations for developing a career or for receiving education. At some point, at least from the feminist point of view, has become something opportunistic. I mean, mentioning that we are welcoming women, that we are promoting equality, but in the very real world, every day, one after another, you see how difficult it is. And it's not only about saying, it's about doing. And this is very difficult. I mean, but we need to be aware of this difficulty, not to oversimplify the problem by giving it a name and using it as a label for not doing really the changes that we need to experience together. It's not that easy, I mean, but we need to be aware of this situation. I mean, it's the opportunistic use of some labels, of some words, pervade their meaning. So we know that.
So we will now pass over to a question here in the room. I think there was another one, yes?
Yes, we would like to hear from the students.
You've talked a lot about past.
Ponte el micrófono bien. Más cerca ahí.
¿Ahí? Vale. You've talked a lot about past and present, about science, a lot things like that. But about the future, what do you know is the most important point for science to develop, to achieve the peace and things like that?
So there's something that yes. Poor, she's running up and down with the microphone. So when I was in UNESCO, I worked for the revision of the recommendation for science and scientific researchers, and the future is and there is a standard setting document that codifies goals and value systems for science to act. And I think that this is a starting point for constructing the future. So we have to share these values. We have to have policies implemented in the countries that are providing the opportunities to use science and the knowledge stemming from all fields of science in a responsible way. And this can be done, for example, as I mentioned before, sharing scientific data, first of all, but also, as I said several times during this meeting, is to providing funds and infrastructure to adequate funds and infrastructure to scientists. We need to adhere to this. The recommendation is not a law. The recommendation is something that gives, that codifies values. But the future is starting from that. We need really to make countries to implement this recommendation, and then we will see what's happened. I mean, but it's hard to have a forecast of the future. But we need to start from the good point, and the good point was that it was an extremely interesting work because it was you need to put all the member states together and to agree on what we consider the values and what's the responsible way of use science, and this is a lot of work. It was very challenging.
We have here a question also for you, that how could we develop programs in science diplomacy?
How could you develop?
And how this will help EU universities consortia to educate EU citizens.
So, this is a very interesting point. This is what I tried to do when I was a Secretary General in the European University Alliance, UGLO, and I hope that EELISA will will give an example to the other European universities to create a new figure. This is the science diplomat or the science diplomat or the diplomat scientific. I don't know how to define it, but it's important to train new figures, new professional figures. And this can be done just through interdisciplinary actions. And what's the laboratory of ideas of a European University Alliance is the right place where you can do that. And Maria Jesus mentioned Maria Retenzi, that is an inspiring colleague that is working on that, in creating training on these new figures, professional figures.
Yeah, I would like
we have to close, no?
No, not really. I will give you, but just coming back also to the other question of the elite. No, I think it's interesting to mention also this question, because if we are really talking that scientists are not so well paid, no, so how could this so we have, I think this question is both. There are scientists from humble backgrounds, so not from from rich families. If this can an impact on scientific community, but I would add also, if the salaries are not so high in science, how can this also affect the ongoing of science if it's really a not so well paid job? So I think this can have also an impact on the future of science. What do you think?
Well,
no, I think hers is working.
Okay.
It's not working?
No, yours, yes.
No, yes.
So I can take advantage of this to say something more. No, thank you. No, I think, salary is an issue, but there are some other problems. I mean, it's about creating knowledge communities, and for these, I mean, money is around. I mean, the problem is not money, because you see during the pandemic, no, they gave a lot of money, and then the RNA vaccine came out. That is a wonderful product, also from the biochemical point of view. It's wonderful. I mean, just to have an RNA messenger to give the opportunity to be protected from an infection. This is, I mean, biologically speaking, I mean, for me that I'm a bit freaky about these things, I think it's wonderful. It's wonderful as an experiment, as a global experiment. So the money is there, and the money is being used by many agencies and by many firms. Knowledge is also there. So what we probably need to implement is an education that includes some reflections about the present. That means that not only talking about experiments, but about the meaning of these experiments and the meaning of these programs of education, and also the meaning of what is called European values. What is this? I mean, what is this exactly? I mean, we talk about European, but what is so profoundly European about values? Nothing, actually. We need a union to be able to support the crisis, to support the market pressures and all this, and to be a big sort of country that involves many countries able to negotiate every single measure, and this creates a huge amount of knowledge and welfare. So it's not only about knowledge as such. It's not only about funding as such. It's about that we need to be powerful in all the areas. And this is not that easy. But we need first to be aware of this. That is not a simple thing, and that is something that we need cooperation. And cooperation is not only to have the presidency seated around a table. We need. The NGOs working together among them, and not only to be seated at one table just to comply with these, obligations that have to have a woman, to have an NGO representative, and all that stuff. It's more complex than that.
Okay, I would like to have a final question. for both of you, but mainly for Casimiro maybe, but I think both of you, because talking about science, talking about peace, and how can scientists really get involved in these issues without getting political? Because it's difficult, no? Not to end, if you want to try to change things or contribute to, but without entering to politics or without saying to which political party do you think belong. So I think this is also an important question, or I would like to hear your opinion. How can we get involved as scientists, but without getting into the political issue?
So everybody has his own ideas, and this is luckily like this. And the point is that when, and I go back to the recommendation of science on science and scientific researchers, setting some values that are set in this recommendation is the way to give a framework in which we can use science in a responsible manner, despite your political ideas. You have to accept, you have to be part, you have to share certain values that are the starting point, as I said before, to the question. So this is not related with your personal ideas. Your personal ideas can, as I said again, likely are different and diverse. But we need to adhere to a set of values, and this is done internationally, as with the hard work of sitting all together and creating this framework of these value systems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. So, do you want to add something, Maria Jesus? No? Okay, then I would like to close, but I would like to give you in the last minute, if you want really to add something that has not been said. Both of you, one last sentence, one last idea that you want to share with all of us.
Yeah, I would like to thank again for organizing this session. I'm happy to be here. I think we need to pose further questions on these issues, and I really hope we would be able to contribute to this further on. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I would like to say that we need to take this opportunity of the European University Alliance to optimize, to catalyze this opportunity and to the students, to the professors, to the researchers, share the activities of the alliances, because the important is that to become structural, integrates all the elements of the university. I know by experience. Thank you very much, and I think really it starts from all the levels, from the students to the rector, to share and optimize this opportunity. And you're doing a great job, and I think the future would be even better.
So before closing, several things. First, this picture of your grandmother.
So this is what I mentioned about the gender. If you see, I mean, this is unfortunately it's during the fascist period, so there is reference to that, and it's Gruppo Universitario Fascista, is a fascist university group. She was obliged. She didn't come from a fascist family at all, but to study, she was obliged to be member. And as you can see in the card, I mean, in Italian, it's with diplomato, it's graduated, it's with O. There was no option for a female. Laureato means also graduated, but like, and it's with O. Everything, studente, in a student, in female will be studentessa. Everything is written just abitante, abitante is for both, but everything is just written in a male, because it was not even considered that a woman could be a university student, and she struggled a lot to study, and I mean, it was for me an inspiring model, my grandmother, and for me, for my sister, my cousins. So when you mentioned that picture, when you showed that picture, I thought it was interesting to show this personal experience.
Yeah. So thank you very much also to share this from your family history. So I would like to thank you both, Professor Maria Jesus Santos Mases, Dr. Casimiro Vizzini, for being with us today. I think it was for me it was a great session. I learned a lot. I hope that also the audience here in the room and online who are watching us probably all around the world, if they have also been inspiring for them. So we have a lot of things to do. The vice rector is present, so I think probably is also new ideas for this European Alliance of Universities. So please check on the web. It's www.EELISA.eu, all the activities we are doing around these ELISA days. There is a full program, a lot of activities, very interesting, so please join us. And you can also revisit all our sessions on YouTube, so if maybe someone you know was not able to be now direct with us, so we can see that afterwards. And now we will close the session, and for closing we will show this video about the life of ELISA Leonida Zamfirescu. Before putting the video, I would like that we give a final clap to our speakers, and I say now thank you very much, and we close officially the session for the next time. Bye-bye.
EELISA, the European Engineering Learning Innovation and Science Alliance, is the alliance of 9 prestigious universities from 7 European countries, with the goal to define and implement a common model of European engineer that would respond to social challenges and combine smart technologies with the need for sustainable development. The Alliance is a strong promoter of democracy, diversity, inclusion, and last but definitely not least, gender equality. The very acronym for the Alliance, ELISA, is meant as a tribute and moral reparation to all women engineers, in fond remembrance of Elisa Leonida Zamfirescu, as the epitome of the essential elements driving the Alliance. Since ELISA had a multicultural... EELISA, the European Engineering Learning Innovation and Science Alliance, is the alliance of 9 methods for mineral analysis and proved her strong determination and social commitment. Being a trailblazer is often a lot harder for a woman than it is for a man, especially in an era dominated by prejudice, like back in the days of Elisa Leonida Zamfirescu, the Romanian who was to become the first female engineer in the history of Europe. Hers is a success story turned into a solid reason for national pride, a narrative to inspire whole generations of young people. Elisa Leonida Zamfirescu was the first female engineer in Europe, but also the first woman who was denied access to the academic technical education in Romania, precisely because she was a woman. Back in an era dominated by bias, she chose to build a career in engineering, a field that was exclusively reserved to men. Her decision triggered animosity, but that only strengthened her determination to work hard and pursue her goal. More than anything else, the story of Elisa Leonida Zamfirescu is the story of a woman who had to fight against the prejudice of her contemporaries. But it is also a success story, because at the end of the day, she made her dream come true. Elisa Leonida was born on the 10th of November in 1887 in Galați, a beautiful Romanian town on the bank of the Danube River. She attended elementary school in her native town, then high school at the Central School for Girls in Bucharest. She also took her final exams in the capital city, with the prestigious Mihai Viteazul Science High School. One of her uncles was an engineer, and one of her brothers was the famous Dimitrie Leonida, founder of the Romanian School of Energy Engineering. But Elisa was determined to prove that women could be successful in the EELISA, the European Engineering Learning Innovation and Science Alliance, is the alliance of 9 prestigious universities from 7 European countries, with the goal to define and implement a common model of European engineer that would respond to social challenges and combine smart technologies with the need for sustainable development. The Alliance is a strong promoter of democracy, diversity, inclusion, and last but definitely not least, gender equality. The very acronym for the Alliance, ELISA, is meant as a tribute and moral reparation to all women engineers, in fond remembrance of Elisa Leonida Zamfirescu, as the epitome of the essential elements driving the alliance, since ELISA had a multicultural cross-border scientific background, made a significant contribution to engineering with her innovative methods for mineral analysis, and proved her strong determination and social commitment. Being a trailblazer is often a lot harder for a woman than it is for a man, especially in an era dominated by prejudice, like back in the days of ELISA Leonida Zamferescu, the Romanian who was to become the first female engineer in the history of Europe. Hers is a success story turned into a solid reason for national pride, a narrative to inspire whole generations of young people. ELISA Leonida Zamferescu was the first female engineer in Europe, but also the first woman who was denied access to the academic technical education in Romania, precisely because she was a woman. Back in an era dominated by bias, she chose to build a career in engineering, a field that was exclusively reserved to men. Her decision triggered animosity, but that only strengthened her determination to work hard and pursue her goal. More than anything else, the story of ELISA Leonida Zamferescu is the story of a woman who had to fight against the prejudice of her contemporaries. But it is also a success story, because at the end of the day, she made her dream come true. ELISA Leonida was born on the 10th of November in 1887 in Galați, a beautiful Romanian town on the bank of the Danube River. She attended elementary school in her native town, then high school at the Central School for Girls in Bucharest. She also took her final exams in the capital city, with the prestigious Mihai Vitezul Science High School. One of her uncles was an engineer, and one of her brothers was the famous Dumitrie Leonida, founder of the Romanian School of Energy Engineering. But ELISA was determined to prove that women could be successful in the technical field as well. She applied to the former School of Bridges and Roads, later turned into the Polytechnic School of Bucharest, only to be faced with a blunt rejection. Such things were non-negotiable back then, when women could not pursue a career in engineering. It took a lot of effort, but she eventually managed to become a student of the Royal Technical Academy in Berlin. The dean of the academy was very reluctant to approve ELISA's application, her main argument being that the fundamental vocation of a woman was the 3 Ks: the kids, the kitchen, and the church. ELISA's life did not become easier once she was accepted by the academy, because at first both her fellow students and her professors were ignoring her in class. However, with her unrelenting determination and patience, she managed to turn the hostility into unanimous admiration during those university years. In 1912, she successfully graduated with a major in chemistry, thus becoming the first female engineer in the world. After graduation, the famous BASF company offered her a job as an engineer, but she declined and chose to return to Romania instead. It wasn't easy, but she eventually got a job as an engineer with the Geological Institute in Bucharest. Amidst the First World War, ELISA Leonida joined the Red Cross and ran several campaign hospitals, an effort for which she was highly decorated. In 1918, she eventually got married on the front line. Her husband was Constantin Zamferescu, the brother of the well-known Romanian writer Duliu Zamferescu. During her career with the Geological Institute, ELISA led 12 laboratories and had a significant contribution to the discovery of new resources of coal, oil, natural gas, construction rocks, chromium, bauxite, and copper in Romania. Next to her work as an engineer, ELISA Leonida Zamferescu also found time to teach physics and chemistry at the Pita Moș School for Girls, and also at the School of Electricians and Mechanics, headed by her own brother, Dumitrie Leonida. She worked until the age of 75, when she retired in May 1963. Her success story remains a scientific legacy carried on to this day, under the auspices of ELISA, selected by the European Commission to be part of the European University Network. This is an iconic financing and acknowledgement program, with a mission to create the fundamentals of a cooperation and sustainability-driven Europe.